Welcome to Room 44. These are 3 allegedly true horror stories from people who took up delivery jobs, food, parcels, groceries, only to find themselves at the mercy of something far more sinister than a bad tip. Each one happened during a late-night run, when the world feels just quiet enough for something terrifying to sneak in. I've been doing DoorDash for about a year now, mostly nights because I go to community college during the day, and the nighttime deliveries pay better. More tips, less traffic, and fewer managers breathing down your neck. I've seen some weird stuff while working the late shift. Drunk customers stumbling to the door in bathrobes, people trying to pay me in weed or other things. One guy answered completely naked and acted like I was the weirdo. But nothing, and I mean nothing, comes close to what happened on a cold Wednesday night back in November. It started off like any other shift. I was logged into the app, driving through a neighborhood I'd been to a dozen times. Lots of mid-century ranch homes, most with little solar lights lining the driveways and wreaths on the doors. The kind of suburb where everything seems quiet and safe until you stare at it too long. At around 11:35 p.m., I got an order from a guy named T. Spencer, address in Pine Creek, one of the older parts of town. Just a McDonald's combo. Double cheeseburger, fries, Coke. Nothing unusual. I accepted it and headed to the restaurant. 10 minutes later, food in hand, I arrived at the house. It looked tired. That's the best word for it. The paint was peeling on the siding, the grass was overgrown despite it being almost winter, and the porch light was flickering like a bad horror movie cliche. Still, I've delivered to worse. I walked up to the porch and knocked, since the app said hand it to me. The door creaked open just a crack. Then, slowly, it swung wider. A man stood behind the screen door. Tall, maybe 6 feet, in a gray hoodie with the hood up. His face was hard to see, the porch light flickering too much to get a clear look. He didn't say a word, just opened the screen door, reached out, took the bag, and nodded. "Enjoy," I said. No response. I turned and walked back to my car, and as I drove away, I watched in the rearview mirror. He was still standing there, watching. Creepy, but not unheard of. Some people are just socially awkward or high or whatever. I shrugged it off. I pulled into a nearby 7-Eleven for a coffee and to wait for the next ping. It came less than 20 minutes later. Same name, same address. T. Spencer. But this time the order was slightly different. No fries, just a cheeseburger and Sprite. I froze for a second, double-checking the info. Could be a roommate, or maybe the guy forgot something and reordered. I accepted. Curiosity nagged at me the whole way back. When I pulled up again, I noticed something was off. The porch light was off completely now. The house looked darker, almost sunken into itself. I approached cautiously, phone flashlight ready. I stepped onto the porch. No sound, no wind, just that eerie dead silence you sometimes get in the early hours. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder. "Hello?" I called. Then I heard it. A faint whisper from inside. "I'm cold." It was a woman's voice, barely audible, breathless. I leaned closer to the door. "Hello, I have your delivery?" No answer. The door creaked open again. Slowly, like before. But this time, no one was there. Just an empty hallway, dimly lit by a single light further down. The air smelled musty, like dust, wet wood, and something chemical. I should have walked away, but I didn't. "Your food's here," I said, stepping 1 foot inside the doorway. I don't know why I did it. Curiosity, maybe, or just stupid instinct. I placed the bag on a nearby table, just inside the door. That's when I heard it again. My own voice. "Enjoy," it said from deeper inside the house. Exactly how I'd said it during the first delivery. Except it wasn't coming from a phone or recording. It was raw, like someone was mimicking me. I froze. Then I backed out quickly, heart pounding in my throat. As I turned to leave, I heard footsteps running across the floor above me. Heavy, fast. The door slammed shut behind me. I practically dove into my car, locked the doors, and peeled off down the street. I called DoorDash support, reported the delivery, and told them something weird happened at that address. The rep sounded tired and unimpressed, said they'd flagged the account. That was it. But here's the part that really messed me up. When I checked my app later that night, there was no second order listed under my completed deliveries. No T. Spencer, no cheeseburger and Sprite. It was like it never happened. I thought maybe I dreamed it. Maybe I imagined the whole thing. Sleep deprivation does weird stuff to the brain, right? Except the receipt from McDonald's was still on my seat, and the soda lid had a thumbprint in it. I didn't go back to that neighborhood for months, but that wasn't the end. 2 weeks later, I got a random call on my personal cell. No caller ID. Against my better judgment, I answered. There was silence. Then faintly, "Enjoy." My exact voice. Click. I changed my number that day, and I haven't done a delivery past 10 p.m. since. I don't know who or what I delivered to that night, but I have a theory. Sometimes, when you interact with enough strangers, something else slips through. Something that remembers. Something that mimics. It doesn't want food. It wants familiarity. And maybe next time it won't let me leave. Story 2. I do Uber Eats part-time to help pay for grad school. Mostly evenings and weekends. I don't mind it. Headphones in, driving around with music or podcasts, dropping off takeout to half-asleep students and overworked professionals. But one night last fall, I got a delivery that I still think about when I walk past basements. And I don't think I'll ever be able to forget what I found at that door. It was a rainy Friday night, around 10:30 p.m. I was about to call it quits when I got one last order. Thai food, medium-sized order, not far from where I was parked. The name on the order was James, and the delivery instructions said, "Deliver to the basement apartment. Come around the right side of the house. I'm sick and can't come up." That kind of thing isn't that unusual. Some people live in basement units or garden flats, and a lot of folks avoid stairs for health reasons. I didn't think much of it at the time. I pulled up to the address 10 minutes later. It was a weathered 3-story house converted into what looked like 3 or 4 apartments. The yard was overgrown, and a large pine tree had branches scraping against the second-floor window. One of those houses that looked fine from the street, until you got close. I walked up to the front, but as instructed, I headed down a narrow, slick concrete path to the right. The side of the house was barely lit by a motion sensor, which flickered as I moved. At the bottom of the steps was a basement door with a small square window, the curtain drawn. The door itself was wooden, chipped, with peeling paint and an old brass handle, the kind of door you'd see in a 1970s crime documentary. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. I leaned forward and said, "Hey, it's Uber Eats. Thai food for James?" From behind the door, I heard faint shuffling, then a slow creak. The curtain twitched, and finally the door opened a crack. Just a few inches. "Leave it on the floor," a voice rasped from inside. Male, tired sounding. "There's a tip taped to the door." I looked down. Taped at eye level to the frame was a small white envelope. I grabbed it instinctively, like muscle memory. Then I crouched to place the bag on the doormat. That's when I noticed the smell. At first it was faint, like mildew and bleach. But as I leaned closer to the door, it grew stronger. A sour, chemical stench that clung to the inside of my nose. It smelled like a hospital closet that hadn't been cleaned properly. Something wrong. The guy behind the door didn't say anything else. Just stood there. I could see a faint shadow through the crack, but nothing distinct. I stood, forced a polite "thanks, feel better," and turned to leave. As I walked up the steps, I opened the envelope, more out of curiosity than anything. Inside was not money, not a gift card, not even a thank you note. It was a plastic zip bag, the kind you'd put jewelry or buttons in. And inside it were 3 small teeth. Human teeth. 2 molars and what looked like a canine. One of them had a speck of dried blood on the root. I stopped mid-step. I just stood there, halfway up the slick stairs, heart pounding in my ears. I turned back to look at the door. Still slightly ajar, still quiet. The envelope in my hand felt suddenly heavier. I walked back to my car as calmly as I could, locked the doors, and sat there, staring at the bag. I didn't know what to do. Call the police? It wasn't technically illegal to give someone. Well, that, I guess. But it was deeply messed up. I was also afraid the cops wouldn't take me seriously. I opened the Uber Eats app to report the delivery as suspicious. But when I tried to bring up the contact information or past order, nothing came up. The order was no longer showing in my completed deliveries tab, just like it had been wiped. That freaked me out more than anything. I knew I hadn't imagined it. The food bag was still in the passenger seat. The receipt still had the address printed on it, but the app showed no trace of it, like I'd never been there. I went home that night with every light in my apartment on. I kept the teeth in the Ziploc, tucked in a takeout bag, just in case I needed to prove it happened. I didn't go back to that neighborhood for weeks. I declined every order that pinged nearby. But eventually I got curious. I Googled the address. It was listed in an old property rental forum with a few one-star reviews from tenants. Most just said the place was moldy or had roaches. One comment, though, caught my attention. Basement unit should be condemned. Smells like death. Can't sleep from the noises at night. Moved out after 2 months. The landlord refused to investigate. Said the last guy there never turned in his keys. That comment was from 6 years ago. I searched deeper. Used the address in news archives, forums, anywhere I could. I finally found a local news article, buried behind a paywall. I paid for it. It was dated back to 2013. A man named James Milton had been arrested at that address for failure to report a death. The article was vague, but mentioned that neighbors had reported foul smells and strange activity. When police entered the basement unit, they found the body of a man who died weeks prior. James had apparently lived with the corpse, convinced he could bring him back to life through rituals and extractions. The article never said what was extracted. I don't think I want to know. I still have that envelope. It's in a shoebox under my bed. I've tried to throw it away twice, but both times, it ended up back in my glove compartment. I don't understand how. And I swear, sometimes when I drive late at night, the app glitches. It'll tell me to go to that same house again. No order, no name, just a pin on the same damn basement. I haven't gone back, but I know one day I'll be tired or distracted or curious enough to follow the route again. And maybe this time the envelope won't be taped to the door. Maybe it'll be waiting inside. If you've made it this far, and your lights are still off, you're braver than most. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more true horror stories like these, new ones every week. Now, let's get into our final and darkest delivery of the night. Story 3. I used to deliver for Amazon Flex. It's different from food delivery. You're dropping off packages instead of takeout, and you're on a tight route with dozens of stops. They pay well if you pick up late-night blocks, especially around the holidays. That's what I was doing last December. A 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift in a semi-rural area just outside of town. Winding roads, few streetlights, lots of old barns and abandoned homes dotting the sides of the highway. I'd done this area a few times before. It was quiet, a little eerie at night, sure, but nothing I couldn't handle. Until that one night, the night I lost 5 hours and part of myself. I was halfway through my shift when it happened. Everything had gone smoothly. Standard drop-offs, no weird customer interactions. It was about 12:30 a.m., and my GPS pinged the next stop, 1187 Ridgeback Lane. I didn't recognize the name or the street, but that wasn't unusual. Amazon drivers rarely pay attention to addresses. We just follow the route. But when I got closer, something felt wrong. The road narrowed into a gravel path. No street signs, just the name flickering on the GPS. I slowed down. My headlights cut through fog that hadn't been there 5 minutes earlier. I checked the package. It was a small brown box marked, "Hand delivery required. Do not leave unattended." No return address, no logo, just that label and a barcode. The air felt heavier as I drove down the lane. Trees leaned in on both sides like watching figures. The gravel gave way to dirt. Then suddenly, a clearing. There was no house number, no porch light, just a one-story wooden shack with warped planks and a sagging roof. An old swing hung from a tree, creaking despite no wind. The GPS beeped. "You have arrived." I should have turned around. Instead, I got out. The dirt crunched under my boots as I walked up to the porch. The boards groaned beneath my weight. The air smelled like rotting leaves and something older. Something like dried blood and copper. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing. I checked the time, 12:42 a.m. I decided to just leave the box on the porch and get out of there. But then I noticed the package was gone. Not dropped, not left behind in the truck. Gone. I stood there, stunned. I knew I had it in my hand when I stepped out. My heart started to race. I turned around to head back to the truck and froze. The truck was no longer there. I stood on the porch, staring at empty dirt and trees. No headlights, no sound, nothing. I was completely alone. I pulled out my phone. No signal, no GPS, just a black screen with a spinning wheel trying to load location. Then, the door creaked open behind me. I didn't turn around. Every instinct screamed not to, but I couldn't move. A low hum buzzed from inside, like static, or a machine powering up. Then I heard it. Footsteps, not coming toward me, walking around me, as if someone or something was circling the porch from the inside. The wood creaked in a slow arc. Then it stopped, right behind me. I turned my head slightly, not enough to see, just to listen, and I heard breathing. Not loud, shallow, wet. Then a voice, soft and emotionless. "You brought it." I didn't answer. I couldn't. "You always do." The next thing I remember is running, barefoot, the ground cold and jagged beneath my feet. My truck was back, just sitting there at the end of the lane. I scrambled in, locked the doors, and sped away. The GPS was still frozen. The clock on the dash blinked 3:55 a.m. I had no memory of the last 3 hours. None. When I got home, I went straight to bed, slept for almost 14 hours. When I woke up, I had texts from my supervisor asking why my shift had ended late, why one package was never scanned, and why my tracker glitched and showed me stationary for hours. I didn't reply. I quit Amazon Flex that week, but 2 nights later, a box appeared on my doorstep. No markings, no label, just a single word written in black marker across the top: returned. I didn't open it. I drove 30 miles out to the edge of a quarry and threw it as far as I could into the water. But the next morning, it was back, sitting on my doorstep, dry, untouched, unopened. I moved 3 months later. New city, new phone, new job. But last week, I got a package on my front step. No barcode, no return address. Just one word: again. And underneath it, handwritten, hand delivery required. Delivery jobs are usually forgettable. Fast food, crumpled receipts, long drives, and cold fries. But once in a while, something slips through. Something you didn't sign up for. A door that opens on its own. A voice that shouldn't know your name. Or a package that won't go away. Thanks for listening to Room 44. Subscribe for more true horror stories that follow you into your dreams. And if you've ever had a delivery that made you question reality, let us know in the comments. We're always watching.